The winning blueprint presents.
In the lab room.
Welcome back. You are in the lab room. It is Monday, August 20th, and we had a slew of preseason games over the weekend that took place. And before I get into all of those, let's start with the Redskins. They did have a preseason game on Saturday, and it was exactly what we needed. As a Redskin fan, we needed that. I think that Robert Griffin III looked good in his first preseason game. He didn't get touched. We needed to see what he could do when pressure was applied, how he would react. And he didn't turn the football over. He did have the fumble, and I thought that slip that he had cost him, because Israel Adonijah was not going to catch him from behind if he didn't slip. And so it taught him a lesson that he has to be more careful with the football in the pocket, if nothing else. He showed us the ability to get out of the pocket and make something happen with his legs. He showed us the escapability in the pocket when a rusher is in his face and he doesn't really have time to react. He still was able to get away from that first rusher, and that's what you want. You want your quarterback, especially if they're mobile, to be able to make that first guy miss in the pocket and still find a way to get the ball off, or at least make him miss so that they can scramble, and he did that. So I saw a lot of positives in that regard, but as a whole, our offensive line has to get healthy. We had a lot of mixed match parts out there, and it showed. I was talking to a friend about Henry Melton, and I said he's going to beat Adam Geddes at some point and get in the backfield and be chasing Robert Griffin III, and that's exactly what happened on the first snap. That was a pass. He swim moved inside, beat Geddes right in front of his face, and I knew that was going to happen. Adam Geddes is a rookie, and he has a lot of grooming to do in this league before he's ready to start. And it's good that he's getting action against live bullets against a good defensive line like the Bears, but he's not ready to start yet, and I knew that would happen. But all in all, I was pleased with Alfred Morris and his in the running game at the beginning of the game. I think that once things kind of started going downhill for the offensive line, it trickled down into the run game as well. The Bears started to get confidence, and they started to get in the backfield. But Alfred Morris, when given holes and given just a little bit of space, he doesn't need much. He can make something happen. I like this guy a lot. It's going to be hard to keep him off of the roster because we don't have a physical in-between the tackles runner in Washington right now. And he serves that purpose. He fills that void. You could argue Tim Hightower is that guy, but I like this Alfred Morris guy. I think we need to find a way to keep him on the roster. The same with Brandon Banks. We got to find a way to keep Brandon Banks on the roster. I know Mike Shanahan said he has to play receiver, and I get it. You can't just be holding roster spot for guys that only serve one purpose. But he's electrifying. He's someone that if he touches the football and gets space, he can make things happen. We got to find a way to keep him on his roster. And I feel bad for Anthony Armstrong because he's been with us for the last 2 or 3 years, and he's did some good things for us. But I'm ready to part ways with him in order to give guys like Desmond Briscoe and Aldrick Robinson a chance. The speed is there. I like what I saw out of Aldrick Robinson. And the speed is there. It's evident. And so if given opportunities, I think some of these guys can make plays. I like Desmond Briscoe. I like his size. I like his ability. It's a reason why we scooped him up after Tampa Bay let him go. He can play football. He scored 6 touchdowns last year. I think you got to give him a shot. If you're the Redskins, you got to take a look at him, or at least a long, hard look at him. It's 2 more preseason games to go. Guys have an opportunity to step up and make a name for themselves and make a case for them staying on this roster. It's going to be interesting, though. One thing we did find out, Cedric Griffin can't be trusted on the outside. And I really like Richard Crawford. I want to see what he can do against better talent. I want to see what he can do against. And next week isn't even going to be a good measuring stick for him because you're getting T.Y. Hilton and Quan Cosby and all these guys out there. These aren't good tests for him. I want to see him up against Reggie Wayne. I want to see what he does against a quality receiver in this league because I think Richard Crawford can actually play some cornerback in his league. And he's showing me the ability to be around the football, and that's what you want to see. You want to see guys around the football with opportunities to make plays, and he seems to be doing it. We brought Cedric Griffin in to be depth, not to be out wide, covering guys on a consistent basis. He got beat early and often in that Bears game. And again, that's what preseason is for. It's for you to find out what you can and can't do with guys, and you found out what you couldn't do with Cedric Griffin. You can't put him outside against elite type receivers and think that you're going to get production out of him. You're going to get beat. I like D'Angelo Hall in the slot. We blitzed him. I thought he almost got to Jay Cutler once, but we have to find better ways of scheming it up to get him to the quarterback. But all in all, again, this was a game we needed to see. We needed to bring Redskin Nation back down to earth for guys who thought that this was going to be a 10-6 season, 11-5. They needed to be brought back to earth to let them know that we're not ready to compete with teams in the league that are going to be contending for maybe a Super Bowl this year. And the Bears, I think, have a chance to contend for a Super Bowl. We're not ready to compete with these teams quite yet. We can play with them, but if we were to play the Bears 10 times, we would probably only beat them 2 or 3 times. And that's realistic. And so we're an 8-8 team. And that's a step in the right direction. Don't get it misconstrued. That's a step in the right direction, but a lot of work has to be done, and that was evident on Saturday. You move on to a lot of the other games that was played on Saturday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Got another look at Andrew Luck. He did throw 2 interceptions. One wasn't his fault. He looked good. He rebounded. He seemed poised. He short-term memory. He got back on the field and took his team down the field for 2 touchdown drives, and so he looks good. You look around the league. Christian Ponder had a solid game against the Bills. Vince Young looks like he's going to lock up that second quarterback position, which I already said I thought he would do anyway. For Buffalo, Blaine Gabbert looked good. He had solid numbers. He's not going to wow you with his numbers. He went like 12 of 16, 112 passing yards or so. Not, huge numbers, but again, from where he came last year, that's a step in the right direction. That Saints defense looks really bad right now, and I don't know how many pieces they're missing. I know Jabari Greer is out, and they don't have Jonathan Vilma, but they're not going to have him for the whole season, so you don't need to harp on that. They got to get some things figured out. That offense hasn't looked as explosive yet, and Meacham is not there, and you got Sproles a little banged up, but they got to get this thing moving in the right direction and quickly because the season is vastly approaching, and the Saints don't look quite right yet. And teams are scoring on them that probably shouldn't be scoring on them, and they're doing it with ease. And so they got some things to iron out, but that's what the preseason is for again. But we'll get to some more preseason action towards the end of the show. Let's get to our lab reports for the day as we continue on these 2-a-days. And the first team up today is the Houston Texans. We're now in the AFC South. And the Houston Texans won the AFC South last year. And you wanna know how it feels to be the little brother? Just ask the Houston Texans. They had been the little brothers in the AFC South for a while now. And Peyton Manning's injury last year kind of cleared the way for them. They really didn't have to work as hard for that division. And they finally got to step out of the big brother's shadow, the Colts, and step to the forefront. And it had to feel good for the Texans to finally not have to worry about the Colts, not have to look over their shoulder and worry if Peyton was going to snatch the rug from up under them. It felt good to be the little brother and finally step out of the shadow of the big brother. And they got a playoff, their first ever franchise playoff berth, and they got a home game as well. So everything was on the up and up for the Texans. And, you know, they have to build on that in the 2012 season. And I look for them to do so. I don't think they have a challenger in that division quite yet. You know, Andrew Luck looks really good. But he's still a year or two away from honestly challenging the Texans in the throne, challenging for the throne in the AFC South. So the Texans have about another year or two before they actually have someone that's going to step to them. And Tennessee is not that far off either, but they're not ready yet either. They have quarterback questions and issues, and they have young guys that need to step up. And so Houston is a veteran team that's ready to play football and win now. And so let's get into their strength. The first strength when you think of the Houston Texans is their running game. Their running attack is very efficient and one of the best in all of football, and it's led by Arian Foster. And that offensive line is unsung, unheralded, but they're one of the most efficient and smooth lines in all of football. They just flat out get it done. That blocking style, that zone blocking scheme fits the Houston Texans line perfectly. And it doesn't really matter who is in there for the Texans. They seem to block well. And they open up gaping holes for Arian Foster, and he does the rest. He's a dynamic running back. He flat out gets it done in the backfield. And his ability to cut back, to stick his foot in the ground and make a sharp cut on a dime is unmatched in this league. And that's what sets him apart from every other running back in this league, is his ability to cut back. Sure, you have other running backs in the league like Matt Forte, who has a devastating cutback, like McCoy in Philadelphia, who has a devastating cutback. But none of their cutbacks are like Arian Foster. All of their cutbacks fail in comparison to Arian Foster. His cuts, his ability to make people miss, his strength in the open field, all of these things are attributes that make Arian Foster one of the top running backs in the league. And he just recently got a big deal from the Texans, and rightfully so. He's been the workhorse for them over the last 2 seasons, and he's proven his worth to this offense. And without this running game last year, after Matt Schaub went down in Week 10, they wouldn't have made the playoffs. You can commend T.J. Yates for the job that he did when he came in, but T.J. Yates is not a guy that you could rely on consistently to win you ball games by himself. And so that running game and that defense were what keyed them and drove them to the playoffs after Matt Schaub got injured. And so this running game is one of the best in the league. They were ranked second only to Denver, who ran on just about every play last year in rush offense. And so the Texans are an elite running football team. They're hard to stop. And now that Arian Foster has a running mate in Ben Tate, who finally was able to get rid of that injury bug and play a full season last year, they got some good production out of him. He almost ran for 1,000 yards. He fell short by about 50 yards. And so that 1-2 combination might be one of the better ones in the league. Ben Tate is a guy that has straight line speed, and he runs with a low pad level, and he has a nose for the end zone as well. And so those two backs with that offensive line, that's a dangerous combination, and teams have trouble stopping the run against the Houston Texans. That's a strength of the Houston Texans. Another strength for the Texans is good old Wade Phillips. Okay? You can say a lot of things about Wade Phillips. And Wade Phillips is not a lot of things, a head coach being one of them. But what you can't say Wade Phillips is a good defensive coordinator. Wade Phillips is one of the best defensive coordinators in all of football. When you just tell Wade Phillips, don't do anything else but coach up my defense, he is great at it. And he proved that again in 2011, coming over and getting into that Texans defense, changing up their defensive scheme from a 4-3 to a 3-4, getting the parts here and there that he needed, mainly Jonathan Joseph at corner, and taking that defense from one of the worst defenses a year ago to one of the best defenses, the 4th overall ranked defense in all of football. They were dead last in pass defense last year. Wade Phillips comes in, implements his scheme. They're now 2nd in the league in pass defense. That's one of the biggest changes I've ever seen. Excuse me, 3rd in pass defense. That's one of the biggest leaps I've ever heard of in terms of from year to year in pass defense. They made a huge leap, and a lot of that had to do with Jonathan Joseph and Wade Phillips coming in and implementing his scheme. And in his scheme, the outside linebackers get pressure on the quarterback. The defensive line get pressure on the quarterback. They went from a team who didn't get to the quarterback to having 44 sacks last year, which was good for about 5th or 6th in the league. And so Wade Phillips came in and transformed this defense into a contending defense. The Houston Texans are no longer just an offensive juggernaut with no defense. They can get it done on both sides of the football. If they stay healthy, look out for the Houston Texans. And you move on to the weaknesses. And with the Texans, you're nitpicking if you're looking for weaknesses, but all teams have them. And so we'll delve into their weaknesses. And it's their 2nd wide receiver position. For years, and no disrespect to Kevin Walter. And normally when you say no disrespect to someone, you're disrespecting them. And so I'm saying no disrespect to Kevin Walter because he's a productive receiver in this league. But he's not a 2nd receiver, not to Andre Johnson. Andre Johnson has been one of the most productive and athletic freaks of a receiver in this league for the last decade or so. When healthy, he's among the best in the league. He's got the respect of his peers in the league, and rightfully so. This guy gets it done. He can run the intermediate routes. He can go over the middle. He can go deep, and that's where he earns his keep. Is he'll get over the top on you, no problem, and he can lull you to sleep because he'll run the dig route 18 yards down the middle of the field and catch that, make a man miss and run for 40 yards for a touchdown, or just as easily run a deep post over the middle of the field and catch a 65-yard touchdown pass, and still has no problem going up in traffic in double teams and coming down with the football. He does it all at the wide receiver position. But across from him is Kevin Walter. And Kevin Walter is really not a 2nd receiver in this league. And so that makes what Andre Johnson has been able to do over the course of his career that much more impressive, because he hasn't really had any help the whole duration of his career. He's been the only threat out wide. And so the Texans have been looking for a 2nd receiver, and they've got a bunch of guys out there looking to help, but no one's been able to assume that position. Kevin Walter has been there, but by default, there hasn't been anybody there to push Kevin Walter. And the Texans have just gotten comfortable with Walter being across from him and said, hey, he's there. He catches the ball when we throw it to him. He's fine. But he's not a guy that the defense has to pay attention to and takes attention away from Andre Johnson. And so that's been an issue for the Texans. But they've made it a non-issue. But nonetheless, just think of how much more productive Andre Johnson would have been if he could have had someone across from him taking a little bit of the attention away from him. You move on to camp battles, and again, the Texans are a triple P now. They made it once, and I see them making it. So I won't say they're a triple P. They're on the cusp. They're a fringe triple P team, and so they're going to make it for the next 2 or 3 years just because there's no one in the AFC South to really challenge them for the division. If they don't throw up all over themselves, they should find themselves winning that division for at least the next 2 years until Andrew Luck and the Titans get Andrew Luck and the Colts get their situation squared away where he has more targets and that team figures out exactly what Chuck Pagano is looking for from them. And then the Titans, they still have a long way to go. They're a young roster, and Jake Locker is the future. And until he's ready to assume the reins there, the Titans are going to be held back in that regard. And so the division is theirs for the taking, that being the Texans, for the next 2 years minimum. And so they should be in the playoffs for the next 2 years. And they have a window to get it done. Andre Johnson is not a spring chicken. Matt Schaub is not a spring chicken. You know, Arian Foster is going into the prime of his career. They need to get it done now. And so they have a small window. They need to get it done. So they don't have a lot of camp battles. You know, I say that, and they lost a few linemen last year. You know, Eric Winston, in a surprise move, cut because of his cap number, was let go, and he's been a solid right tackle for them for years. So he's gone now. And they also let Mike Brissell go in free agency. He's now in Oakland. And so they have areas on their line that need to be filled, but that's what the Texans do. They fill areas on their line with guys that they trust, and they come in and they don't miss a beat. And so I don't doubt that they're not going to be able to do that again in 2012. But the Texans need receivers to step up. And so you think receivers, you think of that slot position, and that's up for grabs in camp. And they have several receivers looking to fill that void there. The first you think of is L.A.B. Jean. He's a second-year guy that was on the practice squad last year. Big, tall guy, 6'3", out of Florida Atlantic. And they like him a lot. They've been showcasing him in the preseason, and I'm thinking that that's going to be the guy that they go to in that third wide receiver position. He knows the playbook. He's been there for 2 years now, and so I think they're comfortable with L.A.B. Jean. They also drafted 2 receivers, Keyshawn Martin out of Michigan State. They used the draft pick on him, and he's a guy that he can run. He's a burner, but he's not as physical as you would like him to be. He's not a run blocker, and the Texans run the football. He's disinterested in run blocking, and so he has to work on that. And if he can't block, he probably won't play. And so he's someone that you could take a look at in that slot. Very shifty, smaller guy that can get his hands on the football and make things happen after he catches the football. Also, they drafted DeVere Posey, the receiver out of Ohio State. And this is a guy, you know, nice size, 6'1", you know, good hands, can get it done, can stretch the field a little bit. He's someone that I thought they drafted with that slot position, maybe taking over as that second receiver in mind, but he's got work to do. And so they're comfortable with Kevin Walter out at that second receiver spot. I think they're going to go with L.A.B. Jean at the third receiver position, but you can never be too sure. You know, keep an eye on that third preseason game again when they come out in their first 3 wide receiver set. See who's in the slot. See who's out there as that third receiver to see who the Texans really like at that third wide receiver position. Really, they have a backup quarterback battle for the third quarterback, but, I mean, not really worth talking about. John Beck and Case Keenum, the rookie out of Houston. Don't really need to waste time on that. The Texans like T.J. Yates. They like what Jonathan Yates was able to do for them last year in relief of Matt Schaub. They are counting on Schaub to stay healthy this year, but if he doesn't, T.J. Yates will be ready to step in. Those other 2 guys battling for that third quarterback position. You really don't want to see them on the field if you're a Texans fan. So that's another battle, but I wouldn't keep an eye on that if I were you. Don't worry about that one. Moving on to Rookie Watch. And the Texans, they're starting to smell themselves a little bit. They're starting to really get ahead of themselves, because I felt like they should have been using their first-round pick to help this offense become better. They just flat out didn't. They really had a luxury pick, I guess they felt. And they took the defensive end, Whitney Merciless, out of Illinois, and I thought they should have been looking to help the offense. I thought they needed a receiver right there. They could have took a great, a good receiving prospect in that first round. And there was some guys there hanging around, and they just decided to go in a totally different direction. And I thought they got after the quarterback last year. They had 44 sacks. Why do you feel the need to add another guy? I know you knew you were going to lose Mario Williams in free agency, but still, the fact of the matter is you were able to get to the quarterback without Mario Williams last year. He got hurt very early on. He only compiled 4 sacks before he got injured. So you still got 40 other sacks from guys that were already on the roster. I like Brooks Reed. I like Connor Baldwin. I like what you had going on, at the linebacker position. Brian Cushing. I didn't think you needed to spend a pick on Whitney Merciless. And so that was a luxury pick. And let's see if he'll pan out for him. He's a guy that can get after the quarterback. He's got those quick twitch fibers you look for in a defensive end / outside linebacker. And he can bend at the hips. He's a guy that can get to the quarterback. But again, didn't think they needed to use that pick on him. They had, I thought, adequate pieces there along that defensive line and at that linebacker position. You go to the third round, and they had 2 picks. Devere Posey, we talked about the receiver out of Ohio State, a guy that I thought they were looking to come in and pay immediate dividends, either in that slot or out wide at that second wide receiver position. But he's got a lot of learning to do. And so he's got to mature, and he's got to mature within that offense. And so it'll be a while before he's a key contributor for this Houston Texans team, but he will contribute in 2012. The other third-round pick is Brandon Brooks, the guard out of Miami of Ohio, and they drafted him with the intent that if Antoine Caldwell, the guard stepping in for Mike Brassell, who left in free agency, if Caldwell can't step in and play at the level that they expect, they will not hesitate to plug Brandon Brooks in and let him play football. They drafted him, and they like what they saw on tape. He has the intangibles. He's got the quick feet. He's a lean guy that can move on his feet, and that's what the Texans look for in their zone blocking scheme. They won't hesitate to pull the plug on Antoine Caldwell if he can't get in there and get it done. They will put Brandon Brooks in, and they have every intention of putting him in if Caldwell is not up to the task. So look for Brandon Brooks to be someone that could be a key contributor for the Texans in 2012 if Antoine Caldwell is not ready to assume that right guard position. Then you move on to the 4th round selections, and their first one was a center, Ben Jones, the center out of Georgia. And again, another guy that's in there that is ready to step in if someone is not doing their job. In this case, Chris Myers, the center of the Texans, he's been playing well. He's playing good football right now, and so I don't see Ben Jones stepping in for Chris Myers. But again, depth. If anything were to happen to Chris Myers, they need someone that can step in and fill in those shoes and do a good job, as Chris Myers does for the Texans. That second 4th round select, and they had 3 actually. They were busy in the 4th round. Their second 4th round selection was Keyshawn Martin, the wide receiver out of Michigan State that we talked about already. He's a guy that can come in, stretch the field a little bit, get you yards after the catch. He's very quick. Again, he's not a guy that is interested in blocking down the field. He has to get better at that if he's going to play for the Texans at wide receiver, because let's face it, the Texans run the football an inordinate amount. throughout the course of a season. And so they're going to run the ball, and you're going to have to block as a receiver. And so Keyshawn Martin is going to have to develop that part of his football game in order for him to get on the field. The next selection in the 4th round that the Texans had was that of defensive end Jared Crick out of Nebraska. Here's a guy that they're looking for depth. The Texans are a team that played a 3-4 defense, but their defensive tackles, you normally at that nose tackle position, you're looking for just road graders, guys that are space eaters that take up double teams. They don't have that. You know, the biggest defensive tackle they have on their roster is Sean Cody, and he's only 301 pounds. And so Crick is a guy that could come in, play the defensive end position, but also double down as a defensive tackle because the Texans don't play big defensive tackles. And Crick is someone that has a high motor, that is going to give you everything he's got when he's out there. He's going to take on his man and going to be a guy that's going to set the edge in the run game. Not really going to get after the passer, but again, he's going to do his job, which is going to be stop the run, be stopped at the point of attack, and he's going to be a rotational guy for the Texans in 2012. You move on to the 5th round selection. And again, anytime you take a specialist, you're looking for him to come on your team and start. And they took the kicker, Randy Bullock, the Lou Groza Award winner, out of Texas A&M, and he can kick. I watched a lot of Texas A&M football last year, and he didn't miss often. He was the Lou Groza Award winner for a reason. He was good at what he did, and so they let their kicker Neil Rackers go in the offseason. They let him walk away, and so they needed a kicker. They went out and got the best kicker in college football last year. And so he's going to come in and look to pay immediate dividends for the Texans in the 2012 season. 6th round selection, Nick Mondet, a tackle out of Purdue, strictly a project. He's not going to make the roster. They're going to stick him on the practice squad, work with him, and see if he could work out for them down the road. If not, 6th round selection, didn't invest a lot in him. Again, he won't make the roster. He'll have to make the practice squad to make this team down the road. So you go on to the experiment. And I titled this one, Houston, We Have Liftoff. After being a franchise that started around 2002 and taking a decade to finally, right around a decade to finally get your first playoff berth, Houston finally has liftoff. They're finally here. They're finally arrived. They're in the playoffs, and they're going to be in the playoffs again in 2012, probably again in 2013, barring any catastrophic injuries. If they can just keep it together, the nucleus of their team, they will be around the playoff scene for the next few years to come. And so they finally have liftoff in Houston. They're finally arrived as a playoff team. So you move to the research question. Can Matt Schaub come back from injury better than ever and help this Houston Texans team pick up where they left off in 2011 and take it even further in 2012? The Texans went to the playoffs in part because of Matt Schaub and his play early on in the season. But he wasn't there to help them when they got to the playoffs. They could have used him last year. And who knows? If Schaub doesn't go down, maybe the Texans are 12-4, 13-3. Maybe they don't have to go to Baltimore in the divisional round of the playoffs. Maybe they're home for that game. Maybe they're able to beat the Ravens, and then maybe then they're able to play the Patriots and beat the Patriots in the AFC Championship game. Who knows? You'll never know because it didn't happen. But you move on to 2012. If Matt Schaub can stay healthy, if Andre Johnson can stay healthy, if Arian Foster in that run game can continue to produce at just the enormous level and that insane rate that they've been producing at, who knows what this Houston Texans team is capable of? Wade Phillips has this defense playing inspired football. And so they're a team that can get it done on both sides of the ball. They don't have a lot of weaknesses. And so if they are able to stay healthy at the key positions, who knows what this Texans team is capable of? Let's get into the hypothesis. If the Texans running game continues to shine, Matt Schaub is his consistent self, and the defense maintains its dominance, then the Houston Texans can reign as AFC South champions and actually be a serious title contender. And I seriously believe that. These guys are ready to compete now, and they have the players at all the skill positions to get it done. The defense is playing good football. They get after the quarterback. They force turnovers. They play the run well. They play the pass well. And so you look at this team, and outside of a few deficiencies that aren't glaring, they're ready to compete right now with the upper echelon teams in the AFC. They can get it done. And so they just need to stay healthy and play consistent football. And they're going to be a dangerous out in the AFC. Materials needed. Your turn, Matt. It's your turn, Matt. TJ Yates had his turn in the playoffs last year. You did a lot of the heavy lifting and you left it off to TJ Yates last year. And he did an admirable job filling in, getting the team to the playoffs and winning a playoff game. But that was supposed to be you. It wasn't. Now it's your turn, Matt. Come in, be the stabilizing force that the Texans need you to be at the quarterback position. Do your job and do it well as you normally do. Take this team to the playoffs and take them a step further. Take them where they've never gone before, to an AFC championship game. Once you get there, throw everything out the window because you have a shot. Arian Foster, silent assassin. Arian Foster has turned himself into one of the, if not the best back in all of football. I love Arian Foster. I had a man crush on Arian Foster in college at Tennessee. His junior season, I saw this guy and I said, who is this masked man? I love this game. He was smooth. Everything he did was smooth. His running ability, his cutting ability, it looked effortless. And I said, I would love to take this guy in the draft. I was begging for the Redskins to take a flyer on this guy. I loved everything that he did out in Tennessee in his junior season. Problem was, he had a lackluster senior season. And so teams really didn't see what I saw. And I didn't know why, because I saw it. And so he didn't even get drafted. And the Texans took a flyer out on him. And luckily enough for them, Dominic Davis was always injured and happened to be injured at the end of the season. Ron Dane was injured at the end of the season. He got a look-see the final two games of the 2009 season, and he showed them what he could do and what I knew he could do. He performed so well, they decided to make him their starter for the 2010 season, and he did not disappoint to the tune of 1,600 rushing yards. He followed that up with another strong campaign in 2011, and here we have one of the best backs in all of football. What makes him even better than 80% of the running backs in the league is he can go out and catch the football better than any other running back in the league, probably aside from Darren Sproles. And I don't think Darren Sproles is the threat that he is to catch it 50 yards down the field on a wheel route or on a go route. And so he brings the total package to that backfield for the Texans. And Arian continued to be a silent assassin. All right. Dre and the O-line, carry on. Continue to be consistently good at what you do. Andre Johnson, no one in the league can stop you. You've proven that time and time again, one-on-one. They have to double team you, and even then, it still doesn't work half of the time. So keep doing what you do, Dre. We know what you can do when you're healthy. Offensive line, you've been the backbone. You've been the linchpin of this Texans offense. The running game is predicated by you opening up holes. The passing game is predicated on you protecting the quarterback. And you've done both of those above average in this league. You've done this exceptionally well for the last 2 years. Continue to do what you have done to help this Texans offense reach heights it's never seen before. Carry on. Wade's defensive crusade. All right, Wade, you've transformed this defense into an upper tier defense in this league. You don't give up points. You don't give up big plays. You don't allow rushing yards. You don't allow big passing days. You've got all bases covered. You get to the quarterback. You force turnovers. You play sound defense. Continue your crusade on the AFC South and in the AFC in general, and continue to make this defense a dominant defense that can contend for a Super Bowl championship. That's your job, and you've done it well. Continue on your crusade, Wade Phillips. Moving right along to data, and you look at the numbers that they need, and you stumble upon Matt Schaub, and 4,430 passing yards, 27 to 30 touchdowns, 11 to 13 INTs, and about a 62.2% completion percentage. Doable numbers for Matt Schaub. If he stays healthy, he'll attain those numbers, maybe even more. And he's key. He's an integral part of this offense, and he's key for them to what they can do. They've shown they can win without him, but they also shown that they can't get, but their ceiling is not as high without him in the playoffs. He needs to remain healthy and play for them. Andre Johnson, 13 to 16 games played. I need you to stay healthy. For the most part, that's what you normally do. You generally play 13 to 16 games. If you do that, you'll be the force that the Texans need you to do. Need you to be. 85 to 93 catches, 1,200 to 1,250 yards, 7 to 9 touchdowns. Those are cake numbers for you. If you stay healthy, you'll have no problem getting those numbers done. Arian Foster. Texans, I beg of you. You have found a gem, a diamond in the rough. Okay? Now that you've made this discovery, don't run him into the ground. You have Ben Tate. You have a backup running back that can carry the load. Don't run Arian Foster into the ground and have him looking like a shell of himself by 28. Don't give him 347 carries every year and expect him to produce for you in the playoffs and not be the guy that you want him to be by age 30. Okay? Use him wisely. He's a young man. He can tote the rock. I'm not saying you have to coddle him, but don't run him into the ground. You've got a backup running back that is capable of carrying the load. Also, use him wisely. So, with all that being said, please give him 250 to 275 carries. Really, I would prefer if that was more like 240 to 260 carries. But I know you're not going to listen to me, and you're going to run him into the ground. He's probably going to see closer to 300 carries. But nonetheless, 250 to 275 for 1,185 to 1,235 rushing yards. 50 to 58 catches for 606 to 635 receiving yards and 11 to 13 total touchdowns. He's already going to touch the ball 50 to 60 times in the receiving game. Why not lighten his load from the carry aspect? Don't let this man take a physical pounding that he doesn't have to, because you have Ben Tate, who I'm looking for 175 to 200 carries from, for 920 to 1,000 yards and 4 to 6 touchdowns. Ben Tate is more than capable of doing his fair share of the workload. Don't make Arian Foster the workhorse that doesn't get a break. Allow him to share time with Ben Tate and keep him fresh for your postseason run. And keep him fresh so that you can get as many years out of this man as possible. He's a Pro Bowl, All-Pro type player. Owen Daniels. 55 to 62 catches, 690 to 730 receiving yards, 3 to 5 touchdowns. He looked good last year, coming off of that ACL injury. He's finally 100% back all the way, and I look for him to have a big impact on this offense. What he's able to do over the middle of the field opens up the deep ball for Andre Johnson, that in the running game, of course. And so that's the reason why the Texans have been able to get away with Kevin Walter playing the second wide receiver position, because their tight ends have done such a great job of occupying the middle of the field and just getting open in space and getting chunks of yards and having defenses have to concentrate on the tight end position. Whether it's been Owen Daniels or Joel Dreesen, they've done a great job of getting open at the tight end position. And the Texans quarterbacks have done a great job of finding them, and that helps Andre Johnson get open as well. Texans defense, 30 to 34 turnovers forced, 45 to 50 sacks. You got 44 last year. That's a doable number for you. With the addition of Whitney Merciless, maybe you'll get to 50. 16.9 points a game given up. And you guys were right around there last year, and so you don't give up points. That's a really good number in this league. That's less than 2 touchdowns and a field goal. You're going to win a lot of games in this league if you can hold opponents to less than 2 touchdowns and a field goal. And that's what you did essentially last year. And so, again, you're going to win your fair share of games doing that. The question is, can you up that to 12 or 13 games and find yourself getting 1 or 2 or possibly home field throughout in the AFC playoffs? That might make all the world a difference. 6 to 8 plays of 40 yards given up. That's right where you needed to be. And you guys were pretty good at that last year, and I don't see why you won't be there again. Independent variable. Health. And again, this is something that I try not to harp on too often, because health is needed for every team in the National Football League, not just the Texans. But again, they were affected greatly by injuries to Andre Johnson, to Matt Schaub last year. And if Schaub is in there for the whole season, who knows what the Texans do? Who knows if they don't go? They were 10-3 at one point last year. They were 10-3. If Schaub's healthy, who's not to say that they don't go 13-3? Who's not to say they don't go 12-4? But they didn't. They went 10-6. And so 10-6 was good enough to win the division, but it wasn't good enough to get you a divisional round playoff game at home. You had to go to Baltimore, and it was just too much for you to overcome. If Matt Schaub is healthy and say you go 12-4, who's not to say that you don't get that playoff game at home at Reliance Stadium? And who's not to say that you can't win that game and go on to the AFC Championship game? So it's very important that Schaub stay healthy, Andre Johnson stay healthy, and that you give yourself the best chance to win come January. And so, you know, TJ Yates is nice. He was a nice story last year. But the ceiling for them winning with him in the game is a lot lower than it is if Matt Schaub is in the game. And that's what you have to take into consideration. Health. The dependent variable is what I just spoke to. If they're able to stay healthy, Matt Schaub, Andre Johnson, Arian Foster, if these guys are able to stay healthy for the most part, sky's the limits for the Texans. They can get it done. They could be in a Super Bowl. They're good enough on offense and good enough right now on defense to play for a Super Bowl championship. And so they have to find a way to stay healthy. Constant. And the constant is the offensive line and Andre Johnson. We've already talked about that. These two are consistencies that the Texans can rely on year in and year out. The offensive line does their job. They go about their business human-like, and they don't make mistakes. They open up mammoth holes for the running backs, whether it's Arian Foster or Ben Tate, to run through. They pass protect for whether it's TJ Yates or Matt Schaub. They pass protect for them adequately so they can run play action fake, sit back there, survey through their progressions, and find the open receiver. And so The offensive line, Andre Johnson has been a monster in this league for over a decade. He's going into his 12th season. And DBs don't have an answer for Andre Johnson. Year in and year out, he gets it done. He makes big plays in the passing game. And he is the face of the Texans franchise. You think of the Texans, you think of Andre Johnson, you think of Dre and him making big plays for the Texans time in and time out. And so the offensive line and Andre Johnson are the constants for the Houston Texans. You move into the conclusion. And the torch has been passed in the AFC South. It is the Houston Texans division to lose. If they want the division, if they want to lay claim to it, if they want to put their flag on the top of the AFC South logo, it's theirs to do so. As long as they play consistent football and get the job done week in and week out, it's their division. The Colts have a ways to go with Andrew Luck. The Titans need to figure out their quarterback situation. And when they finally hand the car over to Jake Locker, when they finally hand those keys over to the car to Jake Locker, he's going to have to take his lumps. You know, he's not a guy that's ready to step in and get it done immediately. And so the Texans are the key players in the AFC South right now. And so they have a window to get it done. And I see them going 11-5 this year. And they're no longer the little brothers. They're the big brothers now in the AFC South. They're the big boys. They're who everyone is looking up to in that division. And so it feels good if you're a Texans fan to finally move out of the shadow of the Colts and establish yourself as a key player in the AFC landscape. And so the Texans, I have them going 11-5 this year. And it's a tough schedule, but it's not an overwhelming schedule. It's not one that they can't sort their way through and find a way to get 11 victories out of. And really, if you're feeling like a team who is trying to win and you want to make the route as easy as possible to the Super Bowl, go 12-4. Find a way to win 12 games. Get a divisional playoff game at home, because 12-4 may not be good enough to get you a home field throughout, but it might be good enough to get you a first round bye in a divisional playoff game at home. And if you're the Texans, you want that. Make your route to the championship as easy as possible. And so if you're the Texans, win as many games as possible. Win them up. Get W's, stack them up like bricks. Let the league sort them out at the end, and you try to make sure that your position at the end of the season is as good as it can possibly be. And if 12-4 is only good enough for one home playoff game, so be it. Go win that game and take care of business on the road. But if 11-5 is only good enough for one playoff game at home, take care of business, and then when you get on the road, show what you're made of. Nonetheless, Texans, take care of business, and everything will take care of itself. Just get a ticket to the show, as you should, and let the chips fall where they may when you get there. And that's going to do it for the Houston Texans. On the other side of this break, we'll come back and we'll talk Tennessee Titans football.
Lab quiz. Lab quiz.
We're back with the Tennessee Titans and their lab report. And this is a team that probably has one of the most publicized battles going on in their camp, and that's for the quarterback position. Anytime you're talking about a starting quarterback position, it's going to get a lot of publicity. And the Titans are a team that's in transition. Last year, they had their first season without Jeff Fisher in 16 seasons. And so Mike Munchak came in, and he did a great job coaching this team. They were quietly hovering around AFC wildcard playoff spot last year. And so this Titans team is dangerous because they give themselves a chance to win. And you just can never sleep on the Titans. And let's get into their strengths. And you look at the Titans, and first thing comes to mind is Chris Johnson, CJ2K. And yeah, he had an off season last year. Off by his standards. I don't consider that an off season. He was able to get over 1,000 yards. And yeah, it wasn't a Chris Johnson-like season. He held out for a contract for more money. And rightfully so, the man's been a workhorse since he's gotten in the league. And he hasn't ever posted less than 1,000 yards in his career. He's been in the league 4 years, and he's never posted less than 1,000 yards rushing. So he needed to be compensated for what he was doing for this franchise. And so he came into camp late. He got a late start, and he was never really in sync with his offensive line until later on in the season. You could see him starting to build momentum, but by that time it was too late. But Chris Johnson is a strength, and if you don't think that he is because of one season, then you're wrong. You're flat out wrong, and you don't get it. Chris Johnson is one of the better backs that we have in this league. I mean, just 2-3 years ago, we were having the discussion, Chris Johnson or Adrian Peterson. And so if you don't think he's a strength of the Tennessee Titans, you're fooling yourself. Chris Johnson is one of the best backs in the league. No one's faster than him. Straight line speed, no one's faster than him in the league. He gallops faster than most guys can run. And so Chris Johnson is dangerous every time he touches the football. Every time he touches the football, he's a threat to take it to the house. Whether it's 91 yards, 75 yards, or 6 yards, Chris Johnson can get it in the end zone. And he's a lot more physical than people give him credit for. He's not just an outside the tackles guy. He can run inside the tackles and still bounce it outside, bounce off of a defender, and still get outside and use that speed to get to the pylons. So Chris Johnson, without a doubt, is a strength of the Tennessee Titans. Don't forget, in 2009, he ran for 2,000 yards, okay? Let's not forget that. Let's not forget that this guy posted some absurd numbers that we rarely see in this league. He went for 2,000 yards rushing in 2009. He's a strength of the Tennessee Titans. You move forward, and you look at the Titans as a team. They play an ugly brand of football, and I say that in a good way, because they're a team that makes the game ugly. They muck it up, and they can put you to sleep. They lull you to sleep with the way that they play football. And what I mean by that is you'll just be going through the motions when you play the Titans because they're such a tough, hard-nosed football team. They've been that way under Jeff Fisher. They're that way under Mike Munchak, and that's the way they play football. They're gonna punch you in the face with the run game. They're gonna stop you from running the football, and they're just gonna slow the pace of the game down. They're gonna grind it out. And you look at the score. You're playing the Titans, and you're not realizing that you're in a dogfight until you look up, and there's 9 minutes and 17 seconds left in the fourth quarter. And the score is 16-13, Titans. And you're like, how the hell did I end up in a dogfight with the Tennessee Titans? But that's what they do. And you have to find a way to eke out a victory 20-16 against these guys. And you want to know, why was I just in a dogfight? Why do I feel like I just got the hell beat out of me? Because you just played the Tennessee Titans. They play an ugly brand of football that slows the game down and brings you to their level, but it's successful for them. If you're not careful and you walk in the L.A.B field, you can lose because the Titans are going to beat you up and they're going to slow the pace of the game down, and you're going to look up at the scoreboard at the end of the game and the Titans just beat you 19-23. And you're going to wonder, how did that happen? I normally score 31 points a game. Or you might beat the Titans, but you might have to eke it out. You're going to have to sweat. And you look up at the scoreboard at the end of the game, and it's 1 minute and 10 seconds remaining, and you have to stop the Titans from going down and scoring a touchdown at the end of the game. And you want to know, why is the score 16-20 right now? Why are we not winning this game by more? Because you're playing the Titans. That's what they do, and that's a strength for them. They play teams tough. They slow the game down. They play their brand of football. Weaknesses. And the Titans have several of them. The first of which is their inability to get to the quarterback. In this league, you have to put pressure on the opposing quarterback. If you can't do so, it opens up opportunities for that team to succeed through the passing game. And as we all know, points are scored through the passing game. And if you can't get to the quarterback, it's hard to generate turnovers. A lot of turnovers are predicated on you getting to the other team's quarterback, whether it's forcing errant throws because of pressure, getting to the quarterback, knocking the ball out of his hand and forcing fumbles. All of this is predicated off of getting pressure. Getting off the field on third down is because of pressure. You get a sack on 2nd and 9, and now it's 3rd and 16. Chances are you're getting off of the field now. You just increased your chances of getting off the field tenfold when you get a sack on 2nd and long and make it 3rd and even longer. So getting to the quarterback is something that the Titans need to do. In 2011, they only did it 28 times. It's not a lot of sacks. Actually, that was second to last. That was 31st in the league. They only bested the lowly Tampa Bay Bucks, who were only able to muster up 23 sacks. 28 sacks is terrible. And the Titans have to be better at that. And they went out and addressed that in free agency, acquiring Cameron Wembley from the Raiders. They're looking for their first-round pick of 2010, Derek Morgan, to finally pay dividends. He's finally healthy after tearing his ACL in week 4 of his rookie season. He's finally healthy, and they're looking for him to provide pressure that they thought they were going to get out of him when they drafted him out of Georgia Tech. So these guys are looking to help the Titans improve on that, because they were bad. They were bad on defense at getting sacks last year, and they need to be better. You also look at their rush defense and their rush offense. Both of these left a lot to be desired last year. And the Titans were 24th in rush defense last year. Not going to get it done. Not going to get it done when you're a team that wants to stop the run and run the football yourself. Well, both of these things were missing in 2011, and that's what the Titans predicate themselves on, being able to stop you from running the football and being able to run it themselves. When you want to muck up a game and slow it down and make it ugly, that's the way to do it. Stop the other team from running and run the ball yourself. And they weren't able to do that. And that's their identity. And they want to get back to that in 2012. They were 30th in the league in rush offense a season ago, 31st, excuse me. And that's not the Titans. That's not their identity. Chris Johnson got off to a slow start. There's no backs really behind him to speak of. And so if he's not producing, they're not getting anything out of their run game. I expect Chris Johnson to come back like a world beater this season and produce big numbers. I'm talking over 1,500 yards this year, because he's ready to break out. He's ready to show people that he is the same guy that ran for 2,000 yards. And so this rush offense is going to get back to where they were. You look along that defensive line, they're relatively young. I mean, you look at Derek Marks, Jarrell Casey, Carl Klug. We talking Derek Morgan outside of defensive end. They're relatively young along that defensive line, and not having Jim Washburn as the defensive line coach for the first time in a while, and taking Jason Babin off of that defensive line hurt them in getting sacks. And so they're a young line, and they got to produce. And so getting sacks, getting production in the run game, stopping teams from running the football, and getting Chris Johnson back to his 2010, 2009 form is going to be key for the Titans in 2012, and I expect them to be better in both areas. I do. I really do. Camp battles. And the Titans do it the way that you should do it. You should have camp battles at positions for guys to push them to make them better. the incumbent starter should have his job, but know that if he is not willing to put in the work and show the coaching staff that he's making improvements, that he should lose his job to someone else who is showing the coaching staff that they've put in the work and that they're ready to come in and produce. And that's how the Titans have done it, especially at the defensive tackle and defensive end spots. Defensive tackle, Sindaric Marks is a young guy. He's come in, and he had an inconsistent year last year. There was times where he looked really good at defensive tackle, and there were other times where he was non-existent. And you can't have that drop-off at the defensive tackle position. And so they came in and they drafted some guys, and they brought people in. They brought in Mike Martin from Michigan this year. They drafted him early on in the draft, and they said, look, if you're not ready to step up, Sindaric Marks, you're going to sit down. You're going to be a guy that's going to be reduced to a rotational guy and not the guy we're going to be relying on to start and give us the bulk of the snaps. And so he took on that the drafting of Mike Martin. He took that as a wake-up call. And now he's performing. In the preseason, he's looked really good. And so they put him next to second-year guy Jarrell Casey, who performed. He showed out last year as a rookie. And he looks good at that defensive tackle spot. So now that defensive line is shaping up if Sindaric Marks can be consistent. And you look at Carl Klug, who came in and provided pressure from that defensive tackle's position. And they got depth at defensive tackle now. Out wide at defensive end, Derek Morgan wasn't getting it done. And again, he was coming off that ACL injury, and so he was a little iffy last year. And, you know, they got veterans like Dave Ball and other guys in there, but you need consistent pressure from your defensive end, and he wasn't providing it. And they went out and got Cameron Wembley to be across from him. But they need Derek Morgan to step up. They spent a first-round draft pick on him, and they want that to pay dividends. And so they told him, look, you know, they got an undrafted guy from Stanford last year that worked his tail off. And that's Pernell Egbo, the defensive end out of Stanford. And he was undrafted by the Titans in 2011, and he made the team. And look, he's come in, and he's pushed Derek Morgan. And what you feel like as the Tennessee Titans brass, if you can't separate yourself as a first-round pick from an undrafted defensive end out of Stanford, if you can't separate yourself from an undrafted guy, you don't need to have the position. And he's taken on that challenge. And he's used it as motivation. And he's come out and he's looked good. I watched them against Tampa Bay over the weekend, and he got a sack. And he was in the backfield. He had a tackle for a loss. He was around the football. He was making plays. He was beating his man off the football. Derek Morgan looked good. And so the Titans are going to give him every opportunity to be the pass rusher, to be the defensive end that they drafted with their first-round selection in 2010. And so while it's a battle, these guys that are in there can lock it up if they just show the coaching staff that they want that position, that they are the right guy for the position, and that they're going to work hard to keep it. And that's how camp battle should be. You look at the center position, and that's a totally different issue there. That is an issue that the starting center, Eugene Amano, went down in camp and tore his ACL and is done for the season. And so somebody had to step up and assume that position. The first guy that they tried was Fernando Velasco. And he came in, and he's done an admirable job at the center position. So much so that Kevin Matthews, the other guy that was supposed to be in that battle, is really not getting a look at starting center. Velasco has played well, and I think he's going to be the starter come week 1 if he continues doing what he's done throughout camp and throughout these last couple preseason games. I would be remiss, though, and I saved the best for last. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Titans quarterback battle. And it's between Jake Locker and the incumbent veteran, Matt Hasselbeck. Now, Hasselbeck started out the season like gangbusters last year. They beat the Ravens last year, and they beat them up good. And it was because Matt Hasselbeck and that offense was in sync. They were throwing the football around. They were making plays. Nate Washington went over 1,000 yards for the first time in his career. He had a career season last year. They were in sync at the beginning of the season. Him and Matt Hasselbeck were. And, you know, Kenny Britt was making plays. They looked good early on last year. But he fizzled out as the season continued on. He calmed down immensely. And when I say he calmed down to the point where, you know, Jake Locker was getting, you know, a lot of playing time. And, of course, you know, Hasselbeck has his injury history and whatnot. And so Jake Locker looked pretty good in the times that he got in the game. And so that prompted them to think that he might be ready for them to hand the keys over to him and for him to drive that Titans car. I don't think he's ready yet. They put him in as starter against Tampa Bay for his first start in that last preseason game, and he didn't look good at all. And what that told me was he's not ready to start yet. If you're the Titans and you want to win now, you play Matt Hasselbeck, and you know what your ceiling is with Matt Hasselbeck. You're 8-9. Maybe if you guys are perfect, you're a 10-win team with Matt Hasselbeck at quarterback. But the ceiling is much higher with Jake Locker, but the floor is also much lower with Jake Locker. If Jake Locker is not ready, and I don't think he is, and you put him in, you could win 4 games. That could be it. Because he could struggle mightily. And once you put him in, you don't need to play yo-yo with him. You don't need to yank him out because he's struggling. You need to let him take his lumps and get better as a quarterback. You need to let him develop his maturation as a quarterback through making mistakes and learning from them. So if he has a 3-4 interception game and goes 9 of 29 with a passer rating of 7, you need to let him get through that. Don't yank him out of the game and put Matt Hasselbeck in because he's a young quarterback. He's going to make mistakes. So that's why you have to be careful with this. If you don't think he's ready, don't start him. Put Matt Hasselbeck in there and let him be the quarterback and let Jake Locker continue to grow, mature, and learn behind Matt Hasselbeck. And by week 7, if you feel like he's ready, put him in there. And that's what I think ultimately is going to happen. That Tampa Bay game was a disaster for him. They won the game and they looked good running the football, but he did not look good passing the football. I think he was something like 4 of 13 for 21 yards. He didn't look good at all. And he threw about 2 picks as well. And so he's got a ways to go. That's what that game showed me. And again, the knock on him coming out of college was he was inaccurate in the pocket. I never want to hear that from a report on a guy that I'm thinking about drafting because you do 70% of your passing from inside of the pocket. You can't be inaccurate in the pocket. And so he has to get better at his craft. He has to learn the nuances of the quarterback position. And I think he'll be a guy that can start later on during the season. I think that's what happened. They'll initially start Matt Hasselbeck and turn to Jake Locker week 6, 7, 8 of the season and turn the reins over to him and see what he can do. You move on to the rookie watch. The Titans just had a simple draft. 1 pick in every round of the draft. And they didn't do anything special. They just did. They were like the Titans. Steady and nothing special. Not going to wow you, but they're going to do what they're supposed to do. And that's what they did in the draft. Their first selection in the draft was Kendall Wright, receiver out of Baylor. Guy that can stretch the field. He's a big play guy. I used to call him baby fat because he just looked pudgy to me. I was surprised he was as fast as he was because he's a big guy, but he can make plays. And with Nate Washington showing up and being that guy that they got from Pittsburgh, the guy they thought they were going to get, you can't rely on Kenny Britt whether he's getting suspended or he's getting hurt with his knee. Kenny Britt is going to miss time. That's something that you have to come to grips with. And so this was a good selection for them because he's got starting, receiver qualities to his game. And so if they can get that out of him when Kenny Britt is not showing up and Kenny Britt is hurt or he's suspended, Kendall Wright could be the guy that could go across from Nate Washington and help this offense reach new heights. And so I thought that was a great pick for the Titans, and he's going to contribute in 2012. Second round pick, outside linebacker, Zach Brown from North Carolina. And this was one of the more funny quotes that I got from Mike Mayock. I love Mike Mayock. You're going to hear me reference his name a lot because, to me, his opinion is gold. When Mike Mayock says something, I listen. Because when he speaks, you know you're getting candidness and you're getting the truth. And you're getting a good analysis from Mike Mayock because all he does is watch football, whether it's college or pros. He watches football. That's what he does. And he does a great job of breaking people down. And his analysis of Zach Brown was, there's good news and bad news. The good news is this is one of the fastest linebackers in the draft, and he's going to be one of the fastest linebackers in the league. He can fly from side to side, and he can get it done as a linebacker. The problem is, and the bad is, he's allergic to contact. You never want to hear that from about your linebacker. He's allergic to contact, and he doesn't like taking on blocks, and he's not the strongest at the point of attack. And so Brown has a chip on his shoulder now, and he's been playing well in the preseason. So well that the Titans might have to think about actually starting this guy at outside linebacker over Will Witherspoon. He's playing good football. They drafted Akeem Ayers last year. He's starting at one linebacker position. And you take a look at Colin McCarthy took over at middle linebacker, and he's done a wonderful job for them. He's done nothing but make plays. I watched him early this preseason against the Seahawks, and he had a pick, a beautiful pick of their starting quarterback, Matt Flynn, where he dropped back into coverage, play action fake. He sucked up a little bit, but was able to fall back into his zone and, you know, snuck under the defense. Flynn didn't see him. Had an open receiver. McCarthy went up, leaped up, and snatched the ball out of the air for a pick. And that's what he's done for this defense. He's quarterbacked the middle of that defense and made plays. And so they're relatively young on this defense. I've said that already. And if Zach Brown starts at outside linebacker for Will Witherspoon, they'll have a total of 2 years between their three linebackers of experience in that National Football League. They're young at linebacker. But Zach Brown is a guy that has played well in his preseason, looks good, and I think he'll get the nod. If they want to save some cap, they'll probably cut Will Witherspoon. He's making too much money to be a guy that's just coming off the bench and is a rotational guy for you. So if Zach Brown gets the nod, he could be an upgrade at that outside linebacker position for the Titans. And he can move. He can flat out move and get it done. And so we'll see if that chip on his shoulder extends to him getting in and mixing it up in the run game and being physical. Because you can't get this far in your career and not want to, you know, mix it up and get in there and stick your nose in there and get dirty. So I know Mike was making a point of exaggerating, but it was funny to me either way. I loved it. You go on to their next selection, and I talked about it. Mike Martin, defensive tackle out of Michigan. This guy was someone that they were looking to plug in and play day one if Sindaric Marks was not ready to assume that defensive tackle position. Sindaric Marks took on that challenge. He saw it as them saying to him, look, either ship up or ship out. And so he took up that challenge and he stepped up. And so Mike Martin is going to provide depth. He's going to play. And he's going to provide depth at that defensive tackle position for the Titans. Defensive back Cody Sensabaugh. And this is an interesting pick in the sense that he's raw. He's very raw. He saw limited time at Clemson at defensive back. And so his big thing was he's a height, weight, speed guy. He's a physical specimen. He ran a 4.35 at the combine. He can flat out run. He's tall for his position. He's like 6'1". So it was someone that they just took a flyer out on and said, look, if we can develop this guy and get him to play football because he's raw, if we can work with him and get the best out of him, we can have a Pro Bowl corner on our hands. And so I'm not sure if he's going to make the roster. I mean, he's a 4th-round selection. I don't know if you can cut him and then think that he's going to sneak onto your practice squad, because other teams know about his athletic ability and his attributes and what he brings to the table. They know about his measurables, so they might have to keep him on the roster and let him play special teams and let him come along as a corner and hope that the light bulb comes on and he gets it and he can come out and perform for them. If not, and they feel like they got 5 or 6 other guys that are just flat out better than him and they don't have the time and they can't sneak him on their practice squad, so be it. But this is a guy that I think they're going to have to keep on their roster and work with him, because you don't want to waste a 4th-round pick. And that's a high draft pick. That's a valuable draft pick. And he's got the measurables to play in this league. They just got to get him to tap into the potential that he has. You look at the 5th-round selection, and that's tight end Taylor Thompson out of SMU. He's the most interesting pick that they have in this draft. And I say that because he didn't play 1 snap of tight end at SMU. June Jones doesn't have a tight end at SMU. He runs a wide open offense that consists of wide receivers and quarterbacks and running backs. That's it. There's no tight end position for June Jones at SMU. And so he was a defensive end in college. And so his athletic prowess is what jumped off the page at scouts and saw the transition to him playing tight end. He runs a 4.59 40. So he's a sub 4.6 guy. He's 6'5", 6'6", big, long, rangy. He's shown the ability to get in and out of cuts. He's not the quickest guy, but he's fast. And so he's not going to wow you getting in and out of his breaks. But if they can get him to learn the position and the nuances of the tight end position, he's strong at the point of attack because he was a defensive lineman, so he can block guys. If they can get him out in the route, he could be a dangerous tight end prospect for the Tennessee Titans. Look out for Taylor Thompson. They're going to work with this guy. He's going to make the roster. He's going to be somebody that if they can get him to learn and buy in to the tight end position and get him to perform, look out. This guy could be dangerous in 2 or 3 years. Free safety Markel Martin out of Oklahoma State. I don't know if he has a realistic shot of making the roster. They're deep at the safety position, and he doesn't do anything special. He does everything adequate. He's got good size. He's got good speed. It's just that he doesn't separate himself from anybody that the Titans already have on their roster. And so it'll be an uphill battle for him being a 6th-round selection, but who knows? He could make the roster off of special teams or what he could bring to the table at the safety position, or he might just be on the practice squad. But it's going to be a long shot for Markel Martin to make the roster. Defensive end Scott Solomon out of Rice, 7th-round selection. He's going to probably make the team. The Titans have about a 7 to 8 man defensive end rotation, and so they go deep at defensive end, and he could be one of the guys that gets in there and gets some snaps. They love their high motor guys. That's what Dave Ball is for them. They love high motor guys, and that's exactly what Scott Solomon is. He had an injury to his foot and to his tricep, or his bicep, excuse me, or his chest at Rice, and so he missed a lot of the 2011 season, his senior year. But the tape on him is enough that they know they're getting a high energy, high motor guy, and he's somebody that will not quit on any given play. He's going to be relentless. He's not overly athletic. He can get after the quarterback, and so he's going to be a guy that probably makes this roster and provides depth for the Titans in the 2012 season. You move on to the experiment, and I dubbed it Tennessee, ugly but effective. And that's what the Titans are. They're a team that plays an ugly brand of football, but it's effective. It works for them. And again, they put you to sleep and you look up with 3 minutes and 13 seconds in the game, and you're in a dogfight. It's 20 to 16, and you're clinging to a lead, And now you got to get a stop at the end of the game to secure yourself a victory. And for 3.5 quarters, you're almost in a lull. The Titans have put you to sleep, and you look up and you finally wake up, and the score is 20-16, and you don't know how you got here. But all you know is now you're in a dogfight. You're in a fight for a win, and that's what the Titans do. And they do that with their overall season. And you look at the Titans, and you're not paying attention to them. They're not on the landscape. You're not worried about them as a playoff participant. And you look up at the end of the season, and there's 4 teams fighting for a wild card spot, and there's the Titans at 8-7 with a chance to go 9-7 and sneak in the back door to playoffs. Where the hell did the Titans come from? Did they come off the pace? No, they've been a consistent team all year that's been around 500, that's been playing good football, and here they are at the end of the season with a chance to sneak in the back door to playoffs. That's just how the Titans are. That's how they operate. Ugly, but effective. Research question. Who will be your starting quarterback, and can they help you compete in the AFC South in 2012? I mean, the Titans have a big question to answer. Who's your starting quarterback? I don't think Jake Locker is ready. I don't think Matt Hasselbeck is your long-term solution. You know that. And so I don't think you're ready to challenge for an AFC South crown yet, because you have a young team. You're young at multiple positions. We talked about how young the team could possibly be at linebacker, how young they are along that defensive line. Cortland Finnegan is no longer out at corner, so you're starting 2 younger guys in McCourty and Altron Werner. And so you got young guys all along that defense. And so you're a young football team, especially on the defensive end. And so, hey, you got a long way to go before you can start assuming that you'll be in the discussion in the AFC South. But the first thing you have to do is get that quarterback situation under control. You go to the hypothesis. If the Titans select the right QB to lead their team this year, and Chris Johnson is up to his normal tricks, and the defense is better, then the Titans will have a chance to compete in the AFC South. And that's what it boils down to. The Titans have to find out who the right man for the job is right now. And right now, that guy is Matt Hasselbeck. Will he be week 10 in the season? That remains to be seen. But week 1, that's the right guy for the job. And the Titans come out of the gate with a brutal schedule. I know they got New England. I wanted to say they got San Diego. They got a tough stretch right off the bat. And so you need a veteran to try to get you through that stretch. If you could get out of there 2-1, 1-2, you'll take that if you're the Titans. You just don't want to come out of the gate 0-3, put yourself in a hole. And if Jake Locker is starting, that's probably what's going to happen. And so you want to give Jake Locker the best opportunity to succeed in the National Football League. Don't throw him to the wolves, especially if he comes out again in this next preseason game and even in game 4 and looks less than prepared to be an NFL quarterback. Don't throw him to the wolves. Continue to allow him to mature and go through the maturation process and let him come in during the season if that's what you think is necessary. But all the components are there for this team to compete right now, but they're young, and that quarterback situation is something that's probably going to hold them back. Materials needed. Who's it going to be? And the quarterback position is one that in the NFL is the most important. You can't talk about any franchise and their prospects without their quarterback being tied to their success. Who's it going to be for the Titans in 2012? I think it's going to be both of these guys ultimately when it's all said and done. I think it's going to start out Matt Hasselbeck and it's going to end up being Jake Locker. And that's probably the way it needs to be. If Matthew Hasselbeck comes out and has a spectacular year, it'll be him from start to finish. But again, Hasselbeck doesn't stay healthy, and I don't think that he has a spectacular year left in him. I think he's a great guy that he has the type of game that lends itself to being a backup for the next 8 years, because he can come in and win you 3 or 4 games, play a 4 or 5 game stretch, and be good for you. And I think he'll be great in that capacity. But his best starting days are behind him. And so Jake Locker is the future, but who's it going to be? I think it's going to be Matt Hasselbeck starting off and Jake Locker to finish it. CJ2K all day. And he's a guy that can take it to the house every time he touches the football. They're going to need him to be the workhorse for that team all day. And I don't expect him to be anything short of magnificent in the 2012 season. He looks good in the preseason right now. He looks like he's getting back to his 2009 form where he ran for 2,000 yards. And so I'm impressed with what I've seen so far. I expect a great season from Chris Johnson, CJ2K. Muck them up, Titans. Muck them up. And what you want to do is just play that ugly brand of football, muck the game up, make it muddy and slow, and just slow the pace of the game down, grind it to a halt, and give yourself a chance to win. That's what you do. That's what you do best. And so that's what the Titans do as a team in the game, and that's what they do as in a season, is they find ways to hang around and stick it out and give themselves a chance to win, give themselves a chance to go to the playoffs. Young players unite. The Titans have a plethora of young players. We talked about it on the defensive end. The offense is a veteran group, but the defense is where they're going to have to keep themselves in ball games, and they're going to have to step up. And so these young players are going to have to unite and play good football. Shore up deficiencies. They're going to have to be better at getting to the quarterback. They're going to have to be better at running the football, which they will with Chris Johnson this year. They're going to have to be better at stopping the run. These are young players, young linebacking core, young defensive line. They're going to have to step up. That front seven is going to have to be better in stopping the run. And they have to shore up their deficiencies, get more turnovers, get more sacks. You can't get 28 sacks and expect to get turnovers. You can't expect to get teams off the field consistently. You can't expect to give your team short fields consistently if you can't get to the quarterback. Get to the quarterback, run the ball better, stop the run, shore up your deficiencies. Moving on to the data. And the Titans need, I got Titans QB down. This is the first time I've done this. But I don't know who's going to play quarterback. And I expect both of them at some point in the season to play quarterback and start for a series of games. And so I have Titans quarterbacks. 2,995 passing yards, 21 touchdowns and 17 interceptions, 57.2% completion percentage. I think that's what they're going to do this season, because it's going to be a mixed bag between Hasselbeck and Jake Locker, and there are going to be a lot of mistakes made. They're probably going to throw more interceptions than they do touchdowns. These numbers are what they need for the Titans to succeed. I think they're going to throw more like 23, 24 interceptions versus 17 to 19 touchdowns, but we'll see. We'll see. Nate Washington, 69 to 78 catches for 1,015 to 1,075 receiving yards and 6 to 8 touchdowns. He's been their most consistent receiver, especially last year. Kenny Britt should be on this list, but you can't count on Kenny Britt. He's been arrested or at least charged or in some involvement in something at least 8 times since he's been in the league. And so he's hurt right now. He just had his knee scoped. And when he comes back from that, he should be expecting a suspension. He'll probably be suspended for the first game or two of the season because of the last altercation he got into over the offseason where he was brought up on DUI charges. And so Kenny Britt has to stay out of trouble. But I couldn't put him on this list because you can't count on Kenny Britt. But you can count on Nate Washington. And that's why he's on this list. Chris Johnson. 275 to 300 carries, 1,485 to 1,535 rushing yards, 51 to 55 catches for 525 to 560 yards receiving, and 12 to 15 touchdowns total. I hate to see good young backs get ran into the ground. And that's probably what's going to happen to Chris Johnson, because they don't have a good backup. They need a backup running back in Tennessee. Darius Raynard has been playing good football in the preseason, has been dangerous on special teams. They got to find a way to keep this guy on the roster because he's been playing good football. And maybe he needs to start getting carries out of the backfield and letting him get out in the backfield and catch screen passes or something. They need to take the pressure off of Chris Johnson, though. They're going to run this man into the ground before he's 28 because he's already had 2 or 3 seasons where he's had well over 300 carries. You can't do that to a young back for a number of years and think that they're going to continue to produce for you at a high level when they don't even, before they reach 30. He's a young guy. He can shoulder the load, but take some of it off of him. You got to find someone back there to take a little bit of the pressure off of Chris Johnson. But he's able to shoulder the load. He's a workhorse. He's a beast. He's dominant, and he's a great running back in this league. But don't run him into the ground. I hate to see that with young backs that are really, really good. Jared Cook. This is a unheralded guy. This is a young tight end that is coming up on his contract season that I think he should be someone that produces more so in the passing game than he is. And his numbers are really good for somebody that does not get the football a lot. And I tell you what, his athleticism and his ability to create after the catch is dangerous. And the Titans need to utilize him more as a weapon. This is a good tight end right here I'm talking to. If you've never heard of Jared Cook, look his numbers up. Look at what he did in 2011. Jared Cook is a good tight end. I like Jared Cook coming out of South Carolina. And I was expecting to hear from him sooner than just last year. He's been quiet up until last year. Last year was his first year really producing at the rate that I think he needs to in this league. Look for him to have a big season in his contract year to warrant somebody to pay him over the offseason. Look for Jared Cook to have 69 and 75 catches this year for 820 to 865 yards receiving for 5 to 7 touchdowns. He had over 700 yards receiving on only 49 catches last year. What that tells me is he's catching the ball and making big plays with it after he catches it, or he's stretching the field, getting down the field, and getting chunks when he does catch it. That's a lot of yards for not a lot of catches. You know, most guys need 67 catches to get 700 yards. He only needed 49. That lets me know he's explosive at that tight end position. They need to use him more. He's an asset to the Titans at that tight end position. Titans defense. And they're a good group. They're a steady group. They don't overwhelm you with their production per se, but they get it done defensively. They don't give up a lot of points. They don't give up a lot of big plays. And so they just need to be more special on defense. More plays where you say, hey, man, that was a really good play right there. Or they need to force more turnovers, get more sacks. Titans defense forced 29 to 32 turnovers. They only forced 24 a year ago, so they could up that number. 23 a year ago. They can up that number a bit. That's not a bad number, not a great number either, though. 33 to 38 sacks. Again, last year they only had 28. That number needs to be in the 30s at minimum. Needs to be in the 30s. And with the additions to the defense with Cameron Wembley and Derek Morgan coming back being healthy, I look for that number to go up. 19.6 points a game. Again, Titans didn't give up that many points last year. They were right around that. They were hovering right around that mark. If you can keep teams from scoring 3 touchdowns a game, you got to feel good about your chances of winning. Titans play that ugly brand of football, and it lends itself to a low-scoring game. And so they got to be able to keep opponents under 3 touchdowns to give themselves a chance to win. 3 to 5 plays of 40 yards given up. The Titans were second in the league behind the Steelers last year in plays of 40 given up. They only gave up 4 plays of 40 yards last year. And so I have them giving up only 3 to 5 because if they can consistently do that, force teams, and that's part of the reason why they don't give up a lot of points per game, force teams to matriculate the ball down the field. Force teams into 10, 11, 13 play drives to get points. Drives stall out a lot of times because things happen. You lose a yard on 1st and 10, get sacked on 2nd and 10, get a holding penalty on 2nd and 10, and all of a sudden the complexion of your drive changes. And so force teams to go 10, 11 plays and score that way. Don't allow them to hit a 57-yard play that gets them to the 12-yard line. Now they're in field goal range. Now they're in range of scoring a touchdown. Force teams to drive, and that's what the Titans do. Independent variable. Football games are won in the trenches, and the Titans were not good at running the football last year. They weren't good at stopping the run last year. They have to be better at both, which takes us to our dependent variable. If you're the Titans, you need to run the football better. I think Chris Johnson, CJ2K, is going to do that this year. He's back to his 2009 form, I think, and I see him having a good season, a great season this year. So that rush offense is going to be where it needs to be. That rush defense is going to get better because, again, a lot of young players along that defensive line. That was their first year without Jim Washburn as their defensive line coach, and it showed. New head coach, new coaches, different philosophy, no more wide nine. They were a different group, and so they had a lot of learning and adjusting to do. And I feel like a second year under Mike Munchak and that defensive coordinator and that defensive lines coach and in that scheme is going to be better. It's going to benefit these guys. And they're another year better in the league. They're another year wiser in this league. They understand angles and leverage and things that they need to do to be a better football player in their second year versus in their first year, because a lot of these guys are young. Jarrell Casey was a rookie last year. Derek Marks is only in his second or third year himself. They're young along that defensive line. Mike Martin is going to be a rookie this year. Carl Klug was a rookie last year. He's in his second year. These are all guys that are going to be key contributors along that defensive line, and so you got to think that another year in the league is going to help them, and they're going to be a better defensive line for it. That takes us to our constants, and it's Chris Johnson and the Titans' offensive tackles. You think about the Titans' offensive tackles, Michael Roos and David Stewart are both guys that have been in the league 7, 8 years, and Roos has never missed a start his entire career. In all 8 of his seasons, he started 16 games and been playing at a Pro Bowl level every single season. Now, he's a guy you can count on. You know he's going to be over there at left tackle every Sunday, and he's going to play quality, mistake-free football. You look at David Stewart, and he's the same way. 7 years in the league, only missed 3 games. And so he's a guy you can count on to be out there almost every Sunday. He gets it done year in, year out. They're 2 Pro Bowl type tackles. And you don't really have to worry about your quarterback having pressure from the outside because these guys do their job and they do it well. They're also good in the run game. Their consistency has been the anchor of that offensive line, and they've been a linchpin for the Titans on offense since coming into the league. Chris Johnson has relied on those tackles. He's run off tackle quite a bit in his career. And he's a constant for the Tennessee Titans as well because every year he's been in the league, he's been over 1,000 rush yards. At some points, he's been the only option on offense for the Titans, and teams go into the game knowing they have to stop Chris Johnson and haven't been able to do so. And so Chris Johnson is also a constant for the Tennessee Titans. You move on to the conclusion, and really the Titans are a team that is continuing to mature under their second-year head coach, Mike Munchak. And really, what it boils down to for them is who's your quarterback? Are you going to pick the right one? Are they going to help you win this year? You're building for the future, but if you're a veteran, you don't want to hear the word future. You want to hear it now. And so the Titans are a team that their style of play lends itself to being in football games, giving yourself a chance to win in the fourth quarter. And again, as a fan, as a coach, as a player, that's all you can ask for is a chance to win the game in the fourth quarter. The Titans are going to have that opportunity more times than not. And so I have the Titans going 8-8 this year. No matter who's at quarterback, with Chris Johnson running the football and this defense being a steady defense that's not going to give up a lot of points, they're going to have their fair share of chances to win games. And they're going to win some, they're going to lose some. But at the end, they're going to be an 8-8 football team, and that's right around where they need to be. That's right around what they are. they're average football team right now. They don't jump off the page on defense quite yet. They have players that can do so, but they haven't tapped into their full potential yet in that regard. On offense, they don't wow you. Chris Johnson is the only really eye-opening guy they have. If Kenny Britt could stay healthy with Nate Washington, with the addition of Kendall Wright at receiver, maybe they could be a dynamic offense, but somebody still has to get them the football at the quarterback position, and we don't know who that guy is right now. And so with that being said, they're an 8-8 football team. That's not going to be good enough to win the AFC South. That's not going to be good enough to get you into the playoffs. But what it will do is help you build on the future and help you build towards next year possibly competing and contending for that AFC crown with the Houston Texans. The Colts are getting better. The only team that you could say right now is behind you in the division is Jacksonville, because they got a lot of work to do. And so if you're the Titans, feel good about 8-8. Feel like you probably could have been better if you would have had a better quarterback situation. But feel good about 8-8 and look to build on that in 2013. And that's going to do it for the Titans. That's a touchdown. Throw it up. And you look at the extra point I'm going to tack on is pertaining to the preseason and all the action we had over the weekend. And I got to watch a lot of football over the weekend. And the Texans look good. Again, the 49ers played. They looked okay. But, man, again, it's the preseason. A lot of teams aren't showing. I'm going to tell you what, the Bears looked really good against the Redskins. Jay Cutler and that offense, they played their players for the first time this season. Jay Cutler, Julius Peppers, Brandon Marshall, Matt Forte, none of those guys played in the first preseason game against the Broncos. They played and they looked good. That offense was clicking. They looked really fluid as an offense. They went up and down the field. They scored touchdowns when they got down there. Michael Bush contributed. This is a team that's going to compete in that NFC North division with the Packers. And they're going to the playoffs. If they stay healthy, barring injuries, they're going to the playoffs. And they're a dangerous team. They look good over the weekend. I was also impressed with what I saw from Andrew Luck, the Steelers. I'm not really feeling that offense right now. That their new coordinator is Todd Haley is coming in with. But again, they're going to look regular until Mike Wallace comes back. They need to stretch the field with Mike Wallace. Antonio Brown is a stud out wide. I love Antonio Brown. He's a playmaker, but they need Mike Wallace. And that offense is going to look a little stagnant until Mike Wallace comes back. But that defense looks to be in form. Andrew Luck looks to be the real deal. And again, you know, Jacksonville played pretty good football over the weekend. Gabbard is looking better. That's all you can ask for. He had his first-round selection, Justin Blackmon, play in his first game. He scored a touchdown. If you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, you just want to see improvement from Mr. Gabbard. You just want to see him play better because he didn't look good a lot of the time last year. He looked lost, confused, and the game looked to overwhelm him last year. And so if he can get it to slow down for him, not look like his head is spinning, and play better, I don't care if it's 3-step drops. That's what you do to a quarterback that needs confidence. You get the ball out of his hands quick. That's what the Browns are doing with Brandon Weeden. They look good as an offense over the weekend against the Green Bay Packers. And so get the ball out of your young quarterback's hands quickly. Get him some confidence, and they can make plays for you. These replacement officials are getting worse as the weeks go by. And look, I can't keep stating this enough. I'm tired of talking about it, honestly. They got to get the real officials in here. This can't continue on into the regular season. Roger Goodell and company have to get off of their high horse. And I know it's a two-way street. The referees have to be able to compromise. But they got to get together and they got to figure this thing out. I don't know what the hang-up is, and I don't care what it is. As a fan, 90% of us don't give a damn about what the hang-up is. Get it done. Get the real officials in here. Get our quality of football back to where it needs to be. Everybody makes mistakes, but these guys are making mistakes on things that should never happen For instance, in the Redskins game, they had a 17-yard holding penalty. Holding penalties are only 10 yards. They're only 10 yards. They gave us a spot foul for a holding penalty. We had a holding penalty that occurred 17 yards in the backfield. 7 yards in the backfield. And they marked it from where the penalty was thrown. Can't do that. We went from second and 7 from the 49 all the way to second and 25 from the 34-yard line. We were supposed to be at the 41-yard line. That's egregious. And the Cowboys game, I watched a little bit of that game, and the Chargers look to be in trouble. They got to get their act together quickly. I don't like what they're doing. The Jets look really bad over the weekend, and they've scored a combined 6 points in their 2 preseason games. They look pretty bad. But I was watching the Cowboys game, and their defense is yet to give up any points. Their first-team defense is yet to give up any points in this preseason. They look good on the defensive side of the football. But Eric Weddle, the Chargers safety, helmet-to-helmet, a Cowboys receiver, and they threw the flag for helmet-to-helmet on a defenseless receiver. The Chargers picked that pass off on that play. They were rewarded the ball, and 15 yards was taken off of the interception. You don't get the ball on a personal foul defenseless receiver penalty. The ball cannot change hands on that kind of penalty. And Eric Weddle was smiling. You could tell he knew the rules. He knew he had gotten away with a penalty that he should still be on the field for. And these replacement referees, that could cost you a football game. Not, turning the ball over and not giving the right team the football, that can cost you a game. 17 yards on a holding penalty and destroying my drive, that can cost you a football game. 3 points can be a difference in this league, and these replacement officials are not ready to be thrown in a real NFL game, and so they got to do something about this. But that was the week that was in the preseason. We got one more game coming up tonight, and that's going to be the Eagles and the Patriots. And so look forward to watching that. And again, enjoy that preseason action. You got Hard Knocks on Tuesday. We'll talk about that again tomorrow. And so that's going to do it for me today. I thank you for joining me in the lab room. Drop me something in the inbox in the lab room at gmail.com. Like me on Facebook in the lab room. On Twitter handle is at in the lab room. And again, I'll see you tomorrow. And same place, same time. I'm out.